Sign this, will you? Hang on, what's this all about? What my husband casually handed over was divorce papers. What do you mean, what's this about? Just look at this paper. I want a divorce from you. Why all of a sudden? It's not sudden. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Actually, I've got a child with the one I love. What? It was like a bolt from the blue. I was so shocked that I couldn't find the words to speak and just stood there frozen. Well, our marriage has been over for a long time, hasn't it? Indeed, our relationship had been strained, but to think he had an affair and even had a child. Wait a minute. I just gave birth to our daughter and just got discharged from the hospital. That day, I had just been discharged from the hospital after giving birth. I thought we were going to live happily with our newborn and the rest of the family, but why? You just got discharged, so I hesitated to tell you today, but it's better to do this sooner, right? Besides, my girlfriend has been nagging me to get a divorce quickly. My husband said with a smug grin. I deeply felt that in the future he envisioned, there was no place for me and our child. I was devastated by my husband's worst betrayal and burst into tears. What am I supposed to do now? And like that, I was unilaterally handed a divorce. 7 years have passed since then. One day, while visiting a large shopping mall, I unexpectedly bumped into the last person I wanted to see. Hey, Patricia? Long time no see. It was my ex-husband, the person I least wanted to encounter. Wow, you've aged. It must have been tough after our divorce. He made remarks that seemed unbelievable from someone who abandoned me and my child. I replied with heavy sarcasm. Thanks to my parents' support, I didn't have any problems without you. What are you bragging about? Your father, that small-town doctor, right? Your parents couldn't have been much help. He laughed mockingly. And, taking my silence as consent, he started bragging about himself without anyone asking. After you, I married a doctor. You, a part-timer, and her are worlds apart. She's capable, younger than me by a decade, wealthy, and ensures a secure life for me. Great, isn't it? Sorry for being the only happy one here? He laughed in a very condescending manner. Oh, where does your wife work? What, you're interested? Smith Hospital. It's a famous general hospital around here that just opened recently. Even you must have heard of it, right? Smith Hospital. I couldn't help but smile at my ex-husband speaking with such a proud look on his face. I knew very well about that hospital. It really makes you think about the irony of fate. Oh, that hospital? Of course, I know it. Because. Seeing the truth, my ex-husband's face turned pale instantly. My name is Patricia. My father ran a small clinic in town, and my mother was the office manager there. Being a doctor, my father was always busy, working tirelessly every day. As a child, I sometimes felt lonely in that environment, but more than that, I had a strong admiration and respect for my father. I want to be someone who can save lots of people just like Dad someday. That used to be my childhood catchphrase. As I grew up, I became a nurse, not a doctor like my father, but I worked in the medical field all the same. However, the job of a nurse was more physically demanding than I had imagined, and I was exhausted every day. Could I really keep up as a nurse? Could I become a cool adult like my father? I was filled with anxiety and impatience every day. Then, I met John, who would later become my husband. John was 5 years older than me and owned the cafe closest to the hospital where I worked. He started talking to me during my lunch breaks, when I would sit with a gloomy face, sighing over the same cup of coffee every day. Hey. I don't know what's got you down, but try drinking this and cheer up a bit. He handed me a coffee with cute bunny latte art. This one's on the house. Come on, smile. John smiled so brightly, it was dazzling. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but smile too. After that, every time I went to the cafe, I found myself increasingly interested in John, watching him. About 3 months after meeting John, I asked for his contact information, and our relationship developed from there. 2 years later, he proposed to me. On the day John came to formally ask for my hand, I will definitely make Patricia happy. So please, rest assured. He told my parents. He looked so reliable then, and I fell for him all over again. My parents looked at John and said, "Thank you. Please take good care of Patricia. Both of you, be happy. We're supporting you," they said with tears in their eyes, genuinely happy for our marriage. And then, on another day. Next, we went to greet John's parents. John might seem unreliable at times, but please take care of him. If John ever gives you trouble, come straight to me. I'll scold him on your behalf, they told me. My in-laws were very easy to talk to and seemed kind. That was my first impression. After the greetings with both families, we got married without any issues. We lived happily, enjoying our days together as a couple. Sure, there were times when I was dissatisfied or found aspects of it unpleasant, but overall, I feel that the good parts about being married and the happiness it brings far outweigh those moments, so I've felt that our marriage has been going well. Then, about 2 years later, my husband suggested something. How about we make your dream come true? My dream? Yeah, you said it was your dream to build our own home, right? Wow! I was surprised by his sudden suggestion. You remembered that? Of course, I won't forget. My dream of wanting to build our own home was something I had only mentioned in passing while we were still dating. So I was surprised he remembered, and more than anything, I was touched that he hadn't forgotten such a trivial detail. Thank you, John. After that, we went to real estate agencies and looked at various properties. Just looking around at the model homes was fun. Wow! Look! How cool! This kitchen. What I was pointing at was a kitchen. I had always dreamed of cooking in such a spacious kitchen. Right? It is cool. Cooking here would be fun, wouldn't it? Patricia, check this out too. Isn't this bathroom awesome? It's stylish and so spacious that you could relax every day. We were excited like kids. We continued to visit properties on our days off several times after that. Discussing what kind of home we'd like was very enjoyable for us. However, after that, the talk of building our home took a turn I hadn't expected. It happened on a day off. My husband and I, having narrowed down our options, headed to the model homes again. And then, for some reason, my mother-in-law was there. Wait, why is she here? I was puzzled by her presence and couldn't help but ask. Then she made a surprising statement. Well, because I'll be living with you too. If we're building a house, you might as well hear my opinions, right? What? I couldn't believe my ears. When did we start talking about that? I hadn't heard a word from my husband about living together. I immediately pressed my husband in a whisper, so she wouldn't hear. Hey, John, what's this all about? She says she's going to live with us, but I didn't hear anything about that. Really? Didn't I mention it? What? You know, last year, after my dad passed away from a heart attack? Mom seemed so lonely, I couldn't just leave her alone. Indeed, my father-in-law had passed away from a heart attack last year. It was all so sudden. My in-laws were really close, always holding hands and going out together on weekends, and I found it heartwarming to see them like that. After the sudden death of him, she was deeply grieving, and both my husband and I were worried about her, but I had no idea he was thinking of living together. I get that we can't just leave her alone, but I had a bad image of living together and was anxious about whether we could get along. But I couldn't just ignore her. What should we do? As I remained silent, pondering, my husband seemed to regret not discussing it with me and muttered, I'm sorry. But, as you see, Mom's happy about living together, so forgive me, he said, looking towards my mother-in-law. She was touring the model home, eyes sparkling as she admired the stylish kitchen and bathroom, saying, how lovely. It had been a long time since I'd seen her so happy. I found myself naturally smiling. Our relationship with her was good, and I thought, well, if it cheers her up a bit, it's okay. Thus, the home consultation progressed, and after a while, our dream single-family home was completed. In the beginning, she would often stay in her room or tear up looking at pictures of her husband, but life in the new home seemed comfortable, and gradually, she began spending more time in the living room. At first, I was overly cautious around her, but familiarity is a powerful thing. Within 6 months, we had found a comfortable distance, and I believe both she and I were living comfortably. However, the atmosphere started to get a bit strange due to my husband's unnecessary comment. I think it's about time we had a kid. This came out of nowhere while my husband, my mother-in-law, and I were having a meal together. Both she and I were shocked, exchanging surprised glances. However, I nudged my husband's foot lightly, telling him, you don't need to say that now, to caution him to stop. But my oblivious husband didn't seem to catch on to my discomfort. Come on, it's true, right? We've been married for 2 years now. Mom, you want to see your grandchild too, right? He said, making a silly face at her. Yeah, of course. She replied, glancing at me, seeming a bit hesitant. I too wanted children, but there was no need to discuss it in front of her. Indeed, children are a blessing. It's not like you can have them whenever you want. Well, I want them too, but they're a blessing, you know? We can't be sure it'll go smoothly, I said calmly. But my husband, lacking any delicacy, went on, come on. It'll happen naturally. Anyway, we will start trying for a baby tomorrow. I sighed heavily in my mind. Then, it happened on a few days after my husband's tactless comment. My mother-in-law went full-on baby mode, constantly asking about kids. How's it going? Feeling any nausea, or today's dinner is fish? It's supposed to boost vitality. I splurged on it, so you two better eat up and work hard tonight, and so on. It turned out that not only my husband but also my mother-in-law lacked delicacy. This led to an increase in comments and actions from her pushing for pregnancy. However, getting pregnant is difficult, and it's common not to conceive when you're actively trying. Months went by without any sign of pregnancy. And after another year, our relationship began to strain. Why aren't you getting pregnant? Is something wrong with you? Don't just decide it's my fault. It could be you. Our arguments escalated, becoming more frequent. Even my mother-in-law was adding fuel to the fire by agreeing with my husband, saying, Patricia, it must be because you're always cold. You should warm up your body more. It was too much for me to handle. Realizing this couldn't go on, I thought hard and said to my husband with a serious look, hey, you know how trying for a baby has been stressful for both of us lately? So, what about we try fertility treatments? Let's get tested. I was worried he would be against it, but he seemed to have his own thoughts on the matter. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, yeah. Let's give it a shot. The following week, we went to a clinic for tests. A few days later, we got the results, and to our surprise, there was nothing wrong with either of us. The doctor suggested we start by tracking ovulation days and timing our efforts accordingly. Getting the results and knowing that I wasn't the cause relieved me, and I was glad we went for the testing that stopped her and husband from blaming me incessantly. Plus, maybe because the stress diminished after getting the results, it felt like a miracle when, 2 months later, my period was late and I found out I was pregnant. She, upon hearing about my pregnancy, was truly happy and said, leave the household chores to me. Just relax and focus on giving birth to a healthy baby. And she became more helpful than ever, returning to her kind self. But it wasn't just my mother-in-law who changed. My husband's attitude started to shift too. And it was not for the better. At first, he was happy about the pregnancy, but gradually he began to treat me coldly. Damn, we have the mortgage to pay, and now we're screwed without your salary, he would complain about not having enough money. I, a nurse, had been earning a decent salary, but entering maternity leave reduced our income. I thought maybe I should have taken maternity leave later, but my mother-in-law had advised, since you have a physically demanding job, it's better to take leave early to avoid any risk to your health. However, my husband was not pleased with this. You could have worked longer. You took maternity leave too early. What could I do? Your mother was worried too. Besides, if we don't live lavishly, your salary should be enough. We shouldn't struggle with money that much. Women have it good. Once they're pregnant, they can dump all the work on the man, he grumbled and stormed back to his room, still in a bad mood. And when my morning sickness started, seeing me rush to the bathroom with a "I feel sick" elicited, again? What a hassle. It even makes me feel sick, from him. It seemed like for my husband, the goal was just to get pregnant, nothing more, nothing less. He appeared utterly disinterested in anything beyond that. Faced with my husband's attitude, I felt immense stress and found myself crying almost every day when he was at work. Seeing me like this, my mother-in-law gently suggested, why don't you go back to your parents' house until you're more stable? Sometimes, a little distance can help. She shared that during her pregnancy with John, hormonal changes led to frequent arguments with her husband, and staying at her parents' home for a while helped her find peace and prepare for childbirth. Hearing such an episode from my loving in-laws made me think perhaps a little distance was necessary right now. By the time I was 4 months pregnant, with her encouragement, I decided to return to my parents' home. The distance from my husband and the active support from my parents finally allowed me to enjoy a calm maternity life. Just being back home, knowing my father, a doctor, was there brought me immense relief. However, taking advantage of my absence, my husband seemed to have started living a carefree life. He began staying out late under the guise of overtime, and sometimes he didn't come home at all, as my mother-in-law informed me over the phone. How could he do such a thing when his child was on the way? Since I moved back to my parents' house, my husband hasn't shown his face once. Moreover, apart from necessary matters, he hasn't contacted me at all. It's only natural to feel angry at my husband for such behavior. The small rift that had formed between us before I moved back home was widening by the day. As my due date approached, I had to confirm with my husband whether he would be present at the birth. But he just dismissed the idea of being present at the birth, saying, "What? No way I can stand there. I can't handle blood." I was beyond angry at his response. I was more dumbfounded. When the labor pains started, my parents took me to the hospital, where I safely gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. About a week later, both mother and child were discharged safely, and I was to return to the home where my mother-in-law and husband lived. The atmosphere of the home felt somewhat different after being away for a while. Thank you for everything during this time. Welcome back. Congratulations on your delivery. Don't worry about the house, I'll take care of it. Just relax, she said with a hint of sadness in her eyes. Puzzled but grateful, I thanked her and sat down on the sofa, holding my daughter. That day, my husband didn't come home even after 10 p.m. I was trying to mend our relationship for the sake of our child, but it seemed like he had no interest in doing so. I'm going to bed now. John must be busy with work and will be home late again tonight. You must be tired after just being discharged, you should sleep first, she said sadly and went back to her room, seeming low-spirited. Then it was around midnight. I heard the front door open. My husband had returned. "I'm home," he said, and immediately went upstairs to the bedroom. "Welcome back. It's late. Our baby is sleeping, so please be quiet," I said, to which he glared at me and snapped, "I thought coming back after a long time would change things, but you're as annoying as ever. What do you expect? She just fell asleep." "Whatever. I have something to tell you," he said, rummaging through his bag and handing me a piece of paper. "Sign this." Shocked, I looked at the paper he handed me. It was a divorce paper. "Wait, what do you mean by this?" It turned out to be a divorce paper. "What do you mean?" "It's clear from this paper. I want a divorce from you." "Why all of a sudden?" "It's not sudden. I've been thinking about this for a while. Actually, I've got a child with a woman I love." "What?" It was like a bolt from the blue. I was so shocked I couldn't find words and just stood there frozen. "Well, our marriage has been over for a long time, hasn't it?" Indeed, our relationship had been strained. But I never imagined he had an affair and even had a child. "Wait a minute. I just gave birth and was discharged. I thought we were going to be happy together as a family." "I hesitated to tell you today since you've just been discharged, but it's better sooner than later, right? Plus, my girlfriend has been nagging me to get a divorce," he said with a smirk. I felt deeply that there was no place for me and our child in the future he envisioned. I was devastated by my husband's worst betrayal and burst into tears. "What about your mother? What will you tell her?" "Oh, my mom? She agrees with the divorce. When I told her about my girlfriend, she said she's better than you." "Huh?" I swallowed hard. I understood the situation. It made her awkward response make sense. "So that's it. Leave this house because it's under my name." "What about our baby? She's your daughter, isn't she?" "Yeah, but I have another one now, and you should take care of her. I'll get in touch about child support. Are we done here?" "I'm busy." With that, my husband began stuffing my belongings into trash bags and placed them at the entrance. As if to say, "Get out." This one-sided divorce proceeding was how our marriage ended. Later, through a lawyer, we discussed child support. It was totaling a significant amount, but my husband didn't flinch. "That amount is fine. I'll pay it, just don't cause any trouble for me or my mistress," he said with a laugh that sounded like a joke. The fact that he could pay was puzzling. I'm not sure where he got such a large sum, but if it meant no longer having to deal with this despicable man, it was fine by me. Yes, I'm no longer interested in you or your mistress. And I have a request: never involve yourself with me again. If you can't comply, I'll take my own actions. My husband frowned briefly but then nodded, all right. The following week, the money was transferred to my account as promised. And just like that, our marriage was over. 5 years have passed since then. I'm now 35 years old. My daughter, born back then, is now 5. After the divorce, I moved back in with my parents. With their support, I resumed my career as a nurse. My days are busy but fulfilling thanks to my lovely daughter. Then, one day, it happened. While at a large shopping mall, I unexpectedly bumped into the last person I wanted to see. Hey, Patricia? Long time no see. It was my ex-husband, the last person I wanted to encounter. Ugh. I couldn't help but let out a word. What's ugh? You've aged, huh? By the way, how have you been since we divorced? It must be tough, he said, as if it was someone else's problem. He spoke as if he wasn't the one who abandoned me and our daughter. You were the one who left me and our child. Suppressing the rising anger with all my might, I replied with heavy sarcasm. With my parents' support, we've had no problems without you, I said sharply. What are you so proud of? Your father, that small-town doctor, right? And your mom, was she the office manager? They couldn't have been of much help. Honestly, you must have struggled without any real support. He laughed mockingly. Anger surged through me, my fists trembling. With the urge to punch him. I knew it wouldn't change the past. As these unpleasant memories came flooding back, I fell silent. Taking advantage of my silence, he proudly began to talk about himself again. After you, I married a doctor. Impressive, right? Her father owns a real estate business, and they're quite wealthy. His remarks clarified why he was able to pay a large sum at the time of our divorce. It must have been that the father of his mistress covered it, upon discovering the affair. I see. That worked out well for you, didn't it? That's why I was able to pay immediately. The moment my mother found out my mistress was wealthy, she immediately agreed to my remarriage. He explained. I had wondered why even my mother-in-law forgave his affair, but it seems she too was blinded by money. Well, you're just a part-timer with a child, aren't you? My wife, a doctor, is leagues apart from you. She's capable, 10 years younger than me, wealthy, and we're set for life. Pretty great, right? Sorry for being the only one happy here. He said with a condescending laugh. Oh? Where does your wife work? What, you're interested? Smith Hospital. It's a well-known general hospital that opened recently around here. You are a nurse too, so you must have heard of it? Smith Hospital. A smirk inadvertently escaped me. I know the hospital all too well. Oh, Smith Hospital. Your wife is working at my father's hospital. Huh? I thought your dad was just a small-town doctor. A few years ago, with some support from acquaintances, he opened it. Remember my maiden name? Smith. Wait. Your father is the director? Yes, that's right. No way. I didn't know my wife had transferred there. I had no idea such a large hospital's director was your father. But there was one thing that bothered me. You said your wife recently transferred to Smith Hospital? Yeah. I was just wondering, your wife's name wouldn't happen to be Elizabeth Jones, would it? How do you know my wife's name? Just as I suspected. To think my ex-husband's mistress was Elizabeth Jones. With so many Jones surnames around, I hadn't realized until now. Fate can be so ironic. Though I no longer held any affection or hatred towards my ex-husband, it was time for some payback. I decided to tell the truth about my ex-husband's wife, Elizabeth Jones. I'm working at Smith Hospital now, so I know her. She transferred there a year ago after a scandal with a married patient at her previous hospital. A scandal with a married man! Were you not aware? Sorry. It was well known at our hospital. Before transferring, she got caught having an affair with a young patient in his early 20s, and his wife stormed the hospital. It was settled with a settlement, so I thought you knew. No way! Elizabeth had an affair? His face quickly turned pale, becoming completely ashen. Perhaps recalling something, he began to mutter, but indeed, that time too, now that you mention it, that time as well. Oh, and right after she transferred, there was this incident. A high school boy's girlfriend made a scene in the hospital room, accusing Dr. Jones of harassing her boyfriend during her rounds. Messing with a high school student is not good. Rumors say she has a preference for younger guys. What? Affair with a married man? Harassment? Elizabeth wouldn't even. That's irrelevant. I can't make heads or tails of any of this. I don't understand anything. He seemed to be in a bit of a panic. It was truly comical. You didn't know that? Maybe she doesn't care for you because you're an older man? Or perhaps because she's heard rumors about you having numerous flings, she's quite satisfied without you. Just like someone we knew back then. Both of you have a thing for younger people. You're really suited for each other. I said, and I couldn't help but laugh, holding my stomach. He, shocked into silence, just stood there. I decided to enlighten him about my current situation. I'm seeing someone now. He's a surgeon at Smith Hospital, a doctor. My father approves of him. My daughter is about to start school soon. She's adorable and a good kid. He cares for my daughter as well, and I'm genuinely happy every day. Sorry for being the only one happy, I told him. Biting his lip in frustration, my ex-husband yelled, "My wife couldn't possibly be like that," but I ignored him and walked away. Is this what they call karma? My ex-husband left me after childbirth for a younger, prettier doctor, but his wife, in turn, was involved in affairs with even younger men. If he had not encountered me at the shopping center, or if he hadn't spoken to me, he might have remained ignorant of his wife's secrets. Serves him right. 2 months later, though Elizabeth Jones didn't lose her medical license, she was transferred again. That was for sexually harassing numerous young patients. When the hospital investigated, multiple testimonies emerged about Dr. Jones's inappropriate behavior, and my father, the hospital director, decided to transfer her to prevent further damage to the hospital. Upon hearing about Elizabeth's transfer, my ex-husband confronted her, realizing the truth in what I had said. This confrontation led to a massive argument between them, resulting in their divorce. Elizabeth took custody of their child, and my ex-husband moved back in with his mother. As for me, surrounded by a loving partner, a delightful child, and supportive parents, I live happily every day. What you do comes back to you. I plan to continue living honestly and uprightly.